Harley-Davidson built its reputation on motorcycles made to last. But in 2026, not every model wearing the bar and shield deserves that reputation. Some have become expensive ownership headaches, while others remain genuinely smart buys. Today, we're counting down 3 Harley-Davidson models to think twice about, and 4 that still deliver the reliability, value, and durability buyers expect from the brand. Worst, number 3. The Street 500 and Street 750, built between 2014 and 2020. Harley built the Street line to do something the brand had never really done before: compete for younger, budget-conscious riders who wanted the badge without the Sportster price tag. On paper, it made sense. In practice, it became the model most veteran Harley owners will quietly tell you to avoid. Here's the first problem, and it's one most buyers don't find out until they're already shopping for parts. Early Street models were assembled in Kansas City, but by 2018, production shifted to Harley's plant in Bawal, India, to hit that lower price point. That's not automatically a deal breaker on its own. Plenty of reliable machines are built overseas, but it came bundled with a parts and service ecosystem that never matched the rest of the Harley lineup. Owners report waiting weeks for dealer-specific components that would be same day for a Softail or Sportster, because dealers simply didn't stock them in volume. Then there's the drivetrain choice that raised eyebrows from day one. The Street uses a chain final drive instead of Harley's signature belt drive. Chains need regular lubrication and adjustment, they wear faster, and they're objectively higher maintenance than what every other Harley on the lot uses. For a brand built on the low-maintenance cruising experience, putting a chain on your entry-level bike sends a strange message. The Revolution X liquid-cooled V-twin itself isn't a bad engine mechanically, but the clutch is where things get expensive. A meaningful number of Street owners report clutch basket and friction plate wear showing up well before 20,000 miles, sometimes as early as 12,000, which is aggressively early for any Harley. Add in digital dash and electrical gremlins that surface on higher mileage examples, flickering displays, intermittent fuel gauge readings, and you've got a bike that nickel and dimes you in ways the rest of the lineup simply doesn't. Here's where it really stings though: resale. A 2016 Street 750 that cost around $7,600 new is now commonly listed in the $3,500 to $4,500 range, which sounds like a bargain until you realize that's a depreciation curve steeper than almost anything else wearing the bar and shield. Harleys are supposed to hold value. This one doesn't, and that tells you something about how the market itself has judged this bike. Quick question before we move on. If a bike this cheap were actually a hidden gem, wouldn't experienced Harley mechanics be quietly buying them up instead of warning customers away? They're not. That silence from the people who work on these bikes every day is worth more than any spec sheet. Harley itself eventually read the room too. The Street line was discontinued in the United States after the 2020 model year, which means everyone you find used is now an orphaned platform with a shrinking parts pipeline behind it. Here's where things take a turn. Moving up the list to worst number 2, Twin Cam 88 Softails, built from 1999 to 2006. This is the one longtime Harley mechanics bring up unprompted, because it's arguably the most expensive lesson the brand ever taught its customers. The Twin Cam 88 replaced the old Evolution engine with more displacement and more power, and it landed in Softails, Dynus, and Touring models across those model years. The problem isn't the whole engine, it's one specific part that Harley got wrong, and got wrong for 7 straight model years before fixing it. The factory cam chain tensioners on the early Twin Cam used spring-loaded plastic shoes to keep tension on the timing chains. Those plastic shoes were made from a composite that simply couldn't handle the heat cycling and vibration of daily use. Somewhere between 40,000 and 80,000 miles, sometimes earlier on bikes ridden hard, those shoes start to crack and disintegrate. And here's the part that turns a cheap fix into a catastrophic one. The plastic debris doesn't just fall harmlessly to the bottom of the case. It gets pulled into the oil pump and circulated through the entire lubrication system, starving bearings and cam surfaces of oil at exactly the moment they need it most. By the time a rider notices the telltale rattle from the cam chest, the damage is frequently already done. a full teardown to replace the tensioners with the later hydraulic design, plus whatever collateral damage the plastic debris caused to bearings and oil pump components, routinely runs $2,500 to $4,000. In worse cases where a rider kept riding through the noise, thinking it was just a Harley sound, full engine rebuilds have crossed $6,000. To be fair to Harley, they knew this was a problem, and they fixed it. Starting with the 2006 model year, the factory quietly transitioned to a hydraulic cam chain tensioner design that solved the issue permanently. That's genuinely useful information if you're shopping used. A 1999 to 2005 twin-cam Softail is a completely different risk profile than a 2006 model with the same nameplate. Check this yourself before you buy. Ask for maintenance records showing the tensioner update, or budget the rebuild cost into your offer, because the plastic tensioner years are still out there on used lots priced like they're the safe choice. Now, let's look at another case. Worst number 1. The Livewire, sold as a Harley trim from 2019 to 2021 and spun off into its own brand after. Now, before the electric motorcycle crowd comes for me, I'll say this up front. The Livewire isn't unreliable in the traditional sense. The motor itself is remarkably simple, and mechanical failure isn't really the story here. The story is what happens to your wallet after the sale, and that's arguably a bigger problem for a buyer than a cracked cam tensioner. Start with the number that should stop you in your tracks. A new Livewire launched north of $29,000, making it one of the most expensive motorcycles Harley has ever sold, electric or otherwise. Riders paid that premium, expecting cutting-edge technology to hold its value the way Harley's gas lineup traditionally has. Instead, used Livewire listings from the 2020 and 2021 model years are commonly found in the $11,000 to $14,000 range today. That's a depreciation hit of over 50% in roughly 4 to 5 years on a motorcycle, which is a category that usually depreciates far slower than cars.
Before we continue, there's a reason most of this is knowledge a dealership would rather bill you for by the hour. The complete field archive goes where this channel can't. The full playbook, uncut. The habits that keep a bike on the road for decades, and the thousands they save you. The code on your screen gets you in. Scan it, and let's get back to the bike.
Here's the twist most buyers don't see coming. It's not really about the battery dying. It's about the battery becoming the single most expensive component on the entire bike, in a market where almost nobody, including most Harley dealers, is equipped to service it. Out-of-warranty battery pack replacement estimates for the Livewire have been quoted in the $5,000 to $7,000 range by independent shops, and because the pack is a specialized low-volume part, turnaround times can stretch into months rather than days. Compare that to any gas Harley on this list, where even a full engine rebuild rarely approaches that number and parts are sitting on a shelf at your local dealer. Then there's real-world range, which sits around 95 miles of mixed city and highway riding, well short of what most touring or even weekend riders expect from a $29,000 motorcycle. Combine steep depreciation, an expensive and hard-to-source battery, and a limited service network, and you've got a bike that's mechanically fine but financially punishing for a second owner. Here's a direct challenge if you're still tempted. Before you buy a used Livewire, call 2 dealers and ask them on record what a full battery pack replacement costs today and how long the wait would be. Most buyers skip that call, fall in love with the silence and the instant torque on the test ride, and only discover the real number after the warranty has already expired. If you love the idea of an electric Harley, that's still a legitimate reason to buy one. Just walk in knowing you're paying a premium for a technology the used market hasn't figured out how to value yet. Now let's flip the script completely, because Harley has built engines and platforms that genuinely earn the reputation the marketing department only wishes applied to every model. These are the ones mechanics point customers toward, not away from. Best number 4. Sportster models with the Evolution engine, built from 1986 through 2003. Forget horsepower numbers for a second. What made the Evolution-era Sportster, the XL883 and XL1200 in particular, into a legend is what it doesn't have. No liquid cooling system to spring a leak, No complex electronic throttle control, no cam chain tensioner drama, because this engine uses a gear-driven cam system that simply doesn't wear the way a chain and tensioner setup does. The engine block itself is aluminum, with a design so overbuilt for the power it produces that mechanics routinely see these motors cross 100,000 miles on nothing more than regular oil changes and occasional valve adjustments. And here's a detail most sellers won't mention because they don't know it themselves. Because Harley used this same basic architecture with only incremental changes for nearly 2 decades, parts interchangeability across model years is exceptional. A part off a 1994 Sportster will often bolt straight onto a 2001, which keeps repair costs low even now, decades later, because you're not hunting for a single obsolete part number. Common wear items are exactly what you'd expect from honest mechanical simplicity. The ignition module can fail on high-mileage examples, and the charging system's stator occasionally needs replacement, both under $300 in parts. That's it. That's the list. Picture the engine bay for a second. No radiator, no coolant hoses, no water pump, none of the extra failure points that come standard on every liquid-cooled bike we've already covered. Fewer systems means fewer things that can leak, crack, or fail you to states from home. For a rider who wants a genuine Harley experience without a 5-figure financial exposure hanging over every ride, a well-kept Evolution Sportster is close to the safest bet in the entire used market. And clean examples can still be found for $4,000 to $6,000, depending on mileage and condition. But another detail stands out. Best number 3, the Road King, specifically from 2007 to 2016 models running the twin cam 103. Remember that plastic cam chain tensioner disaster from worst number 2? This is the direct redemption story on the exact same engine family, in the exact same touring platform. Once Harley switched to hydraulic cam chain tensioners starting in 2006, the twin cam addressed one of its most notorious weak points and became a much more dependable long-haul engine. The redesigned system reduced the wear problems associated with the earlier tensioners and gave owners a far more durable foundation for high-mileage use. That matters even more on a touring motorcycle like the Road King, where the engine is expected to spend hours at highway speeds, carry luggage and passengers, and accumulate mileage that would expose any major design weakness very quickly. Instead of constantly worrying about whether the original tensioner material is slowly disintegrating inside the cam chest, owners of the later setup have a much more robust system to work with. It doesn't make the twin cam maintenance free, and age, oil changes, and overall service history still matter. But the hydraulic tensioner conversion removes one of the major time bombs associated with the earlier engines. The Road King is where that redesigned twin cam shines brightest, because the platform combines the engine's strong low-end torque with the kind of long-distance riding where durability actually matters. This is the difference between a motorcycle that simply survives high mileage and one that was finally engineered to make high mileage feel routine. The Road King's chassis is deliberately simple for a touring bike. No fixed fairing to add weight and vibration-induced cracking, a stripped-down bar and windshield setup that keeps unsprung weight down, and a suspension tune that was built for genuine mile-after-mile comfort rather than showroom looks. Owners running these bikes as daily commuters and cross-country tourers routinely report 150,000 to 180,000 miles with nothing beyond scheduled maintenance, primer belt inspections, and typical wear items like brake components. Here's a specific number worth knowing if you're cross-shopping the used market. The 103 cubic inch engine in these years produces meaningfully more low-end torque than the earlier 88 and 96 cubic inch twin cams, and that extra displacement changes how the engine works in everyday riding. You don't have to rev it as hard to maintain speed, climb a hill, or accelerate with luggage and a passenger on board. At typical highway cruising revolutions per minute, the engine can make the torque you need without constantly working near the upper end of its useful range. That matters because an engine that does not have to work as hard under normal conditions places less stress on the clutch, transmission, primary drive, and other drivetrain components. It also means fewer aggressive throttle inputs just to keep the bike moving at highway speeds. particularly when you're riding into a headwind or carrying extra weight. Less strain at cruising speed does not guarantee a longer engine life, since maintenance, temperature, oil quality, and riding habits still matter enormously, but it can contribute to lower mechanical stress over hundreds of thousands of miles. That's exactly the kind of advantage a spec sheet won't fully communicate. The difference becomes much more meaningful when you're looking at a used motorcycle with 50,000, 75,000, or even 100,000 miles on the odometer and trying to understand how that engine has actually lived. And here's the mini reveal most shoppers miss entirely. Because the Road King uses the exact same 103 cubic inch engine as the much pricier Electra Glide and Ultra Limited from the same model years, you're getting touring-grade twin-cam reliability in a lighter, simpler chassis for thousands less than the fully faired models. You're not paying for less engine, you're paying for less fairing plastic and less audio equipment to eventually fail. There's another lesson here. Moving to best number 2, the Heritage Softail Classic and Fat Boy, built from 2017 onward on the Milwaukee 8 platform. This is where Harley finally addressed the elephant in the room that had followed the twin cam for its entire production run: heat management. Older twin-cam Softails were notorious for cooking riders' legs in stop-and-go traffic and running hotter than ideal in general, which accelerated wear on everything from oil seals to electrical connectors. The Milwaukee 8 fixed this with a genuinely clever redesign: 4 valves per cylinder instead of 2, which lets the engine breathe more efficiently at lower revolutions per minute and run cooler for the same output. But the detail that actually matters for long-term ownership is the dual counterbalancer system Harley introduced with the Milwaukee 8. Fewer vibrations transmitted through the frame means less fatigue on every mount point, every fastener, every wiring harness connector on the bike over the life of ownership. That's not a marketing bullet point. That's a structural engineering decision that reduces the number of things that can loosen, crack, or fail over 80,000 miles of riding. Independent shops report meaningfully lower comeback rates on Milwaukee 8-equipped Softails compared to the twin-cam models they replaced, particularly for oil leaks at the pushrod tubes and head gaskets, both classic twin-cam weak points that the Milwaukee 8's revised cooling and sealing design largely resolved. And here's the part that sounds like a contradiction until you think about it. Harley added displacement, going from 103 or 107 cubic inches up to 114 or even 117 on certain trims, while simultaneously making the engine run cooler than its smaller displacement predecessor. Normally, more displacement means more heat. Here it means less, because the 4-valve heads and improved oil routing more than offset the extra combustion volume. If you want the classic Softail silhouette, the fat rear fender, the retro styling, without inheriting the mechanical baggage of the engine family it replaced, this is the generation to buy. Now here's another interesting detail. And that brings us to best number 1, the Street Glide and Road Glide, Milwaukee 8-equipped models from 2017 to today. Every reliability advantage we just covered on the Heritage Softail carries straight over here: cooler running heads, the dual counterbalancer smoothness, and better sealing at the usual twin-cam trouble spots. But what pushes the Street Glide and Road Glide to the top of this list is what happens after you already own one. These two models are consistently Harley's best-selling touring bikes in the United States, which sounds like a marketing detail until you translate it into ownership reality. Every dealer service department in the country is deeply familiar with this exact platform. Parts inventory is deep rather than special order, and the aftermarket support for everything from exhaust to suspension components is the largest of any Harley model currently in production. When something does need attention, you're not waiting weeks for a rare part. You're often riding away the same day. That ecosystem advantage shows up directly in resale numbers too. A well-maintained 2018 Street Glide with 25,000 to 35,000 miles is commonly still commanding $15,000 to $17,000 on the used market, retaining a genuinely strong percentage of its original MSRP, the exact opposite of the depreciation curve we saw on the Street 750 and the Livewire. That's the clearest signal the used market can send you. When a bike holds its value this well years into ownership, it's because buyers with direct experience keep coming back for more of them. Freeze the frame on that comparison for a second. Same basic engine family as the Heritage Softail we just covered. Same cooling and counterbalancer improvements. But wrapped in the platform Harley sells more of than any other. That combination, proven mechanicals plus the deepest support network in the lineup, is exactly why this pairing sits at the very top of the list instead of the Softail it shares an engine with. The Batwing fairing on the Street Glide and the frame-mounted Sharknose fairing on the Road Glide also do double duty, protecting the rider's hands and the front wiring harness from weather exposure, which is a small detail that quietly extends the life of switchgear and connectors compared to a fully exposed cockpit. So here's the short version to keep in your back pocket before you go shopping. Walk away from, or at minimum heavily discount your offer on, any Street 500 or 750, especially India-built examples from 2018 onward. Treat any twin-cam Softail from 1999 to 2005 as a rebuild waiting to happen, unless you can verify the tensioner update in writing. And go into a Livewire purchase with your eyes open about what a battery replacement actually costs once the warranty clock runs out. On the other side, an Evolution-era Sportster remains one of the cheapest ways into genuine, low-drama Harley ownership. A 2007 and newer Road King on the redesigned twin-cam 103 is proof that the same engine family can go from liability to legend with one design fix. A Milwaukee 8 Heritage Softail or Fat Boy gives you the classic look without the classic headaches. And if you want the single safest, easiest to live with Harley on the used market right now, the Milwaukee 8 Street Glide or Road Glide is genuinely hard to beat, both mechanically and financially. Before you buy anything on this list, do one thing. Pull the VIN, check the model year against the engine changes we just walked through, and ask the seller directly whether any of the known fixes have already been done. That 5-minute check is the difference between buying a legend and buying a lesson. Every bike on this list wears the exact same badge on its tank. That's the part worth sitting with. Two bikes can share a logo, a paint scheme, even a showroom floor, and still sit on opposite ends of what ownership actually feels like 5 years down the road. The badge tells you what the company wants you to believe. The engine family, the model year, and the used market's own pricing tell you what's actually true. Trust the second set of numbers. If you like uncovering hidden truths, subscribe and join us again soon.